Okay, so like here we go. We're gonna do it. We're doing it. It's October time, which means it's gonna be Halloween time. Very excited about that. It's pumpkin spice o'clock, really. Yippee, hip hip hooray. So this has been kind of a crazy week. It's been a series of crazy weeks. In a good way, also, in challenging ways. This week I wanted to talk about something that is a little more up, not so down. I realized the last 5 videos have been a little heavy, a little tough to just kind of easily, breezily listen to. So in lieu of another really introspective thing that you have to it's kind of like homework, I decided to talk about something that is equally as much fun to talk about for me, and that is Netflix. You want to know why? I'll tell you. A lot of people have an issue with Netflix, right? And they've been disillusioned, considering that nowadays it's just kind of like a corporate showcase of similar tropes and happenings that they were rebelling against when they first started. It was a fun little kooky startup, and it was a great idea. I think a lot of people long for those days, and I'm certainly one of those people. But there's a reason why I will always be a Netflix stan. Let me count the ways. People love to pine for Blockbuster, the good old nostalgic days of Blockbuster when you could just walk in and all the yellow and blue, 1,000 copies of one commercial movie that just really did well in the theaters. Now they really want to do well in the rentals. I had mixed feelings about that place at best. And most of the time I was kind of in this like resentment haze whenever I went in there. Blockbuster shut down every mom and pop video store. Back in those days, that's the only way you could get movies, was a video store, and then it turned into a DVD store. Go in, you have an account, you rent as many as you wanted to. I really loved my local mom and pop ones. It was like an impulse buy. When I went into the store, I could be like, oh, can I rent a movie real quick? I really preferred it that way. I preferred everyone has access to it, kind of a vibe. It was like Walmart. Like Walmart came in and just kind of decimated mom and pop stores, like general stores. Yeah, that's pretty much what Blockbuster did in the world of rental entertainment. I have always kind of had my ear to the ground of indie stuff, more off the beaten path type of titles. I would go in there and just ask them if they knew, if they had, something that did well at festival and only had limited release, a place that rents, that's what they do. You would think that they would at least humor me, and on multiple occasions I would ask for a certain movie and they would be like, no, I don't think so. Like, I can look it up for you if you want. It was just a lot of sarcasm. Maybe it was my age. I don't know. That always kind of pissed me off. You have 5,000 copies of a big budget blockbuster. Hence the title, I get it. Could you maybe put one of those back and try an indie movie? Like, Hollywood Video shows up and they kind of toted like, oh, we're not like Blockbuster. Like, we're edgy, we're cool, we get you. There was a few more titles, but at the same time, they were making a point to be obscure, so they didn't really have the ones you were looking for, but they had Ghoulies 1, 2, 3, and 4. Not that no one was looking for those, but I left disappointed in the same way that I left Blockbuster often. This was a big deal to me. This is my favorite pastime. I wasn't part of the Hollywood Video crew, I wasn't part of the Blockbuster crew, so not to mention late fees were something we could all have done without. I racked up one time, and this wasn't a Blockbuster, this was one of those mom and pop establishments that I was talking about. I think it was our local grocery store, actually. But I racked up $50 worth of late fees for one video because I was obsessed with it. It was Reality Bites, directed by Ben Stiller, stars Winona Ryder and Ethan Hawke, and Janine Garofalo, and Steve Zahn. It's on. I still know all the words. I had the soundtrack. It ran really deep, and I don't know why. I just like fixated on it. $50 worth of rental fees. Yeah. I honestly just wanted another way. I wanted to not feel like a weirdo for my taste. It just turned into this thing. So then here comes Netflix. At first, people thought it was a joke. Oh yeah, you're gonna send away for movies and they're gonna show up in the mail like okay.com. A lot of people made fun of it. I was like, it's worth a try, we'll see. And I wasn't super optimistic necessarily. I was just like, it's worth a shot. And then I got my first account, $6 for unlimited in time limit that you could have them. You could do it as many times as you wanted to. Like, you could watch it, send it back, get a new one. That's what I did for a long time. All of the obscure titles that I looked for, I would read an article with one of my favorite actors. They'd be like, oh yeah, I'm in this passion project, it's called this. I would go directly to my Netflix queue, look it up. Every time, I'm sure there must have been times that I didn't find it immediately, but then I would check again and it would be there in a matter of like a month or two. Do you know how good that felt? Like, that felt so good. I get, for a nominal fee, like per month, I get all the content that I'm looking for. After wearing out my my queue, as fast as I could fill it, it would be gone. Streaming wasn't a part of it as much. Streaming was kind of like an offshoot. You could do if you wanted to, you know, and then it got bigger and bigger. Obviously now they changed the landscape. I quit TV altogether in light of Netflix. Actually, it was YouTube and Netflix. You want the real tea on the situation. YouTube, you used to be able to find indie movies, entire series of a show that you loved that was kind of hard to find, a BBC series that you know couldn't necessarily watch here in the States, which, if you have seen my video about being an Anglophile, chef's kiss to the early days of streaming, because it was kind of like international waters. Like, everybody was just kind of seeing what they could do and what they could get away with. Was it entirely ethical and legal? No, but I don't think the industry itself is all that legal or ethical. So for them, by that time, Netflix wasn't being scoffed at anymore. As it's becoming like a mainstream thing, all of the studios and all of the networks, it was like they got to advertise on Netflix. They didn't realize the grand scheme and the larger scope, as none of us did. I'll get to that. But so they were like, okay, wait a minute. They're really cutting into our business. I don't think I'm the only person that was like, why do I have cable that's like $80 to $100 a month when I could just do Netflix, you know, and either stream or get send out and just enjoy my life. And that's when the rate increase debacle happened, where they had to increase their rates. And that's the first time that they did, to like in a big way. It went from like $6 to like $8. People were okay with that, I think, because it was still so much value. To jump to like $10 or $8 or whatever it was. Screw Netflix. I can't believe them. Like, how could they? They betrayed us. Felt that a little bit. But because I've always been following the industry, you know, and I was aware of what was happening to Netflix, that they were put in a really compromising position of like, okay, do we keep negotiating? Do we, you know, like, what are we going to do in the long term to ensure that our brand, Netflix, and the way that we conduct business still has integrity in light of all of the studios and all of the networks putting a clamp on us? You have to play ball. If you're in that milieu, if you're in that arena, you have to play that game. They tried their best, I think, but it was a shitstorm. After that happened, a lot of people canceled their subscriptions, which is fine. I have canceled mine for monetary reasons over the years, like maybe 2 or 3 times, but I always, when I could, got right back into it. I saw it from the ground up. I was doing the send out service. I had the unlimited indie cache of interesting stuff that I wanted to watch that they would just send me. And then I'd find other stuff. It was something really beneficial for me. The Blockbuster people, they didn't, I don't think, quite cared as much. They just were like, oh, this is trendy, I'll give it a try. So when things went sideways, they felt that was their chance to be like, screw you, Netflix. But I don't think anyone saw what was coming next, which was the original content. Scrolling through and thinking of something to watch, and I saw Netflix original, a show called Hemlock Grove, starring Famke Janssen, Bill Skarsgård. Everyone knows from it now. He's got a bigger career now, but back then he was kind of an unknown. And it was produced by Eli Roth, who of course kind of pioneered torture porn horror movies, which I'm not a big fan of, but it was cool to see kind of notable people making original content for Netflix. Gaskets just popped out of my head because I was like, oh my God. That's what they were working up to all those years. All the send out service money, their business model revealed itself. And I was just like, what? Like, I was excited. And then a very sharp thrill of fear went through me. And I went, oh no. We had it in this arena, in the streaming arena, which they kind of pioneered and revolutionized, stepping up their game. And they were getting in with Disney and CBS and NBC and long time kind of old money institutions. And I was like, shit. I knew it was going to be different. Things did change. A lot of the availability of the genres that I really leaned on disappeared. I was bummed, yes. All the LGBTQ and anime festival stuff that you can only kind of find on Netflix or YouTube, as I said. I'm probably not supposed to bring that up. Like, I don't want to bite the hand that will potentially feed me someday. Because the studios and because the networks were like, okay, we're not playing anymore. You're cutting into our profit. Like, fuck off, basically. Netflix had to readjust. So in that readjustment, a lot of the wonderful things that I loved about it kind of went out the window. True. What did we get in return? What did I get in return? The way that we do things nowadays. Netflix changed the game with all of that. They gave an alternative, a different way of doing things way back when it was simpler times, but they also changed the way that society, culture, the way that we enjoy entertainment. Before, you had to go to the movies or you had to go to Blockbuster. There was no, I feel like I want to just stay in my house and still enjoy myself, and so they filled a niche. What's a niche? They filled a niche for us that we didn't even know we wanted. It's like introverts got together and were like, hey, what would benefit us the most? And Netflix was born. So I have to give them props. If you think about all of the cultural impact that they've had over the last, 20 years, it's hard to stay mad at them for morphing into corporate suits, inevitably, when their heart, I believe, is still in the right place. For those of you who don't follow trade, like industry goings on, Disney tried to buy Netflix a few years ago. Kind of headline news for a minute there. There was a negotiating thing that went back and forth for a few days, but ultimately Netflix was like, no, I'm sorry, Disney. Like, we didn't just work our asses off to build up this production company to have you swoop in and take it. Disney owns 40% of the entertainment marketplace. 40%, that's almost half. One company has almost a complete monopoly on the entertainment landscape. To me, no matter how much you love Disney, that doesn't seem right. And especially in light of, I used to love Disney. I still know all the words to most of the movies, up to a certain year. Nowadays, it seems like all they want to do is make money. And so they'll hire a talented director, they'll hire a talented writer. They will manipulate the system just so they can make a lot of money. For Disney to have the balls to be like, oh, we're just going to swoop in and snatch you up, Netflix. Is that cool? You want $1 billion, huh? It's offensive to me. And I think it was offensive to Netflix too. And so for that reason, I will always have a soft place in my heart for them. Because there's such importance on the content that Netflix creates, they do have to play corporate hardball. I haven't done a deep dive into the CD part of Netflix. I hear little things here and there. Was that their intent from the beginning? I don't know. Was Jeff Bezos' intent from the beginning to do what he's doing now? I think it's a certain point of success, you have to compromise. Someone approaches you in a dark alley and is like, hey, are you going to conform to the way things are done? Or are you just going to stay at your same level? And a lot of people choose the next level. Why else would every show of integrity, every artistic expression starts off so pure and good, and then they just go into the weeds at some point? It is disheartening. But I will say that if you can back a horse, and if not 100%, if you can't back a pony 100%, 80% is pretty good. 75% is pretty good. And so I still feel like 75 to 80% is the percent to which I still really appreciate what Netflix has to offer me. Yes, some of the content that I'm made privy to, either by just other ads, on YouTube or whatever, or through, kind of negative reviews. If the former Netflix, the fledgling Netflix, could look into the future and see what content would be affiliated with Netflix in the future, they would go a little pale and throw up in their mouth a little bit. Yes, that's true. For every he's all that, I don't do influencer-based things that are just surrounded in influencer type things. Call me old school. For every he's all of that, we get Sex Education, which is one of the best series I've seen in years. For every lukewarm, well-produced, pretty, but surface level type of documentary, we get Crip Camp or we get Exit Through the Gift Shop. Remember that they're in that marketplace now. They still have decent writing, they still have integrity, and they do still strive to tell stories from a very positive place or an all-encompassing inclusive place. And that's hard to do. It's hard to please everyone all the time. It's impossible, really. They're competing with their own self, basically. They have their own level of achievement and accomplishment to compete with, because that's what all the other streaming services aspire to. Outside of probably a handful of shows from other streaming services, Netflix kind of just dominates. It's not because they're trying to make money necessarily that will follow. In my heart, I still believe that the people that love film, the people that really want good stories to be told, those people are still working at Netflix. They've revived careers, like with Cobra Kai. I don't do 40 years after sequels to things or prequels. I'm not a fan. It's cool to see Ralph Macchio in action again. Updated favorites from my childhood, Inspector Gadget. They redid Inspector Gadget, which was one of the weirdest, coolest cartoons. It's not just adult entertainment, for children's entertainment too. Tried to continue the same type of Mr. Rogers, forward-thinking, good lessons, not just throw away adults are trash and kids are smart kind of a thing. And I really appreciate that. It's weird stuff, it's counterculture stuff, but for me, a counterculture person that's raising counterculture people, it's so nice to see that. It's refreshing. The entertainment industry failed to yield the internet in a big way. If you look around, like all of the people that were like, the internet, what's that? And got all cocky and thought that that there was no way that it was going to take over, kind of did. Netflix saw an opportunity and worked with the times, worked with technology, worked towards the future instead of trying to dwell in the old ways and keep it right where it was, which I feel like the industry did for a long time. It's still doing it. Netflix inspired better, deeper, more interesting characters, more interesting stories. If you don't believe that, then take Netflix out of the equation in the landscape. Are you even able to do that? Not really. All the way back from their first original programming to now, it inspires other artists. That's big. We can eat nutritious meals or we can eat frivolous desserts. All that I ask is that you contribute with the recipe. You know what I'm saying? Sequels, prequels, and a million takes on superhero genre. That's fine if that's what you're into. If we're not really grounding ourselves in meaningful things at the end of the day, it's forgettable. The way that things have developed so, I guess, intensely in the industry, it's still hemorrhaging money. That's scary for a lot of people. It's cost a lot of people jobs, and I would in no way celebrate that in any way. However, I just want the industry to get its head out of its ass and be able to accommodate for the future, for people who are asking better of it. Take away all the behind the scenes stuff. If you completely leave that out of it, which how could you these days? But, aside from that, look at what you have in the theater versus what you have on a streaming service. It's a big difference. If you look at the intent between the different companies, the various companies, Netflix is still churning out some really interesting, really, really cool stuff. For the most part, yeah, there's the odd head scratcher where you're like, that may connect with someone else. I appreciate where they have come from. I appreciate that I was at the ground floor. They created a place for nerdy little cinephiles like myself to have their druthers, at least for, the formative years of the company. Maybe the studios and networks are just jealous that they didn't go there. And that Netflix had the balls to and is reaping the benefits. And now, having said all that good stuff, I will say this, Netflix. Please take your time. There are some really good, really amazing, original ideas that have come from you. I feel like as it just keeps getting milked for viewership, it's losing its dazzle. Stranger Things is one of those examples where the first season, second season, pretty good. Third season, a little wishy-washy about the inspiredness of it all. I know you're competing against yourself pretty much, nipping at your own heels, trying to stay relevant and trying to stay afloat in an ever-changing landscape that you yourself pioneered. I get that. But just take your time. Being that you're kind of the kingpin, you can do that. Just keep on doing what you're doing. Let your work speak for itself, but take your time. That's my spiel about Netflix. What are your favorites? Do you still like? I still get excited when I hear the ba-boom. Like, I remember the first time I heard that. Like, it was their little like calling card, their little ba-boom. Fox has do 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 do. Universal has do 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 do. So what I want to know is like who decided on the ba-boom, because it's like perfect. It's very appropriate. It's like new school, but like, I don't know. So if you know, I'm sure it's a Google search away, but yeah, just let me know, what are your faves? Are you a Netflix stan? You more of a Hulu person? You prefer Amazon Prime? You into that sling? And thanks for being here with me. Hang in there. We got a lot of energies coming in, rushing onto the planets. We got a lot of chaotic things happening all around us, but just stay strong. Deep breath. Pull up your Netflix queue and just get lost in a beautiful place. That's how I deal with a lot of things. Little break and then things aren't so bad. So again, thank you, Netflix, for years and years of entertainment and for being a friend when I really needed one. I'll see you guys soon. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share if you want to. Hit the notificationer. And I'll talk to you soon. Until then.